Good evening. Welcome to the Velvet Note. I'm Tamara Fuller, owner of the Velvet Note, and your host for this evening's performance. Tonight, we're going to profile the life and the music of Miss Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday was, without a doubt, one of the most well-known, iconic jazz singers we've ever known. But there are elements of her life that very few of us are familiar with. And they had a huge impact on our music. And tonight, I can't think of anyone better to tell that story than Mr. Justin Varnes. Justin is a music educator, a performing drummer, a member of our prestigious advisory board, and several years ago, he founded a series called Legends of Jazz, which profiles the lives and the context around the music of America's greatest jazz artists. That series is now in its 8th season, and soon you'll be able to purchase seasons in the past, all for your own listening and viewing enjoyment. And this is one of those installments. Tonight, he has his band with him, the Justin Varnes Quartet, which features John Sandfort on saxophone, Grammy Award-winning Kevin Smith on upright bass, Nick Rosen on piano, and of course Justin on drums and narrating the performance. It really is like getting a concert and a jazz appreciation class. We had 2 very special guests for this performance. One is trumpeter and music educator Mark Rapp. Mark came in and laid down some great trumpet for this performance. It was like a breath of fresh air. Thank you, Mark. Another special guest in the role, if you will, of Billie Holiday was Miss Nicole Chilemi. I hadn't actually heard of Nicole before this performance, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to meet her and enjoy her music. I was a little taken aback when I first saw her, in that she doesn't look anything like Billie Holiday did. She did a great job of helping to tell the story of Billie Holiday's voice and treatment of the music. Nicole herself holds a bachelor's degree in vocal performance from Emory University and is a performing artist and recording artist in her own right. And we thank her for taking on this performance. She did a fantastic job. Finally, before we get started, I would like to ask you to please consider donating to help us to continue to bring these performances from our living room to yours. We cannot do it without your help. And we greatly appreciate your support, past, present, and future. Thank you so much. All you need to do in order to make a donation is to go to the donate button on our website, thevelvetnote.com, or put into your URL box, thevelvetnote.com/donate. And the donate page will allow you to make a contribution of any size, any sort that you would like. Your generosity is greatly appreciated, and like I said, it's not often that I ask for help, but I would say that especially in these times, we cannot do this without you. So thank you so much. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, the life and the music of Billie Holiday.
The Velvet Note's a place where you can see and hear world-class musicians in a setting that's as intimate and as comfortable as your living room. We give you a chance to get to know the musicians here, but also to hear the music the way that it was meant to be heard. The Velvet Note is a listening room. We had our acoustics designed by a protege of the Hollywood director George Lucas, under his guidance, to be the highest quality, unenhanced sound available today. And after 7 years and almost 2 months, the Velvet Note is pleased to announce that we've had 4 consecutive awards by Downbeat Magazine for being one of the top 100 jazz clubs in the world. Which just still tickles me. You should have seen our first show. There were 0 people here. But you guys are here. Yes. All right. And you have a great show tonight. This is part of a series that we have called Legends of Jazz. It gives you an opportunity to not only enjoy the music of a jazz icon, but also to really understand the cultural and the historical influences that impacted that individual's life and work and music, and I would say legacy. So it's kind of like taking a jazz appreciation class, but with crab cakes and wine. And tonight, we are going to have the pleasure, true pleasure, of hearing the music of Miss Billie Holiday. I know, right? The Legends of Jazz series was conceived of and is led by our music director, a member of our board, and just an overall great musician and just a huge, I would say, supporter and mentor in the jazz community. His name is Justin Varnes. Also in this rhythm section, we are pleased to have back with us tonight Grammy Award-winning bassist Kevin Smith. On piano tonight, we have the incomparable Nick Rosen. On saxophone tonight, we have one of our absolute favorites, Sandfort. And we have 2 special guests. You might ask yourself, who is going to sing the music of Billie Holiday? I know, do you know? Really? Go ahead and answer. Oh, you don't remember her name? Oh, okay. I was going to say, I just learned how to pronounce her name myself. Okay, all right. Her name is Nicole, say it with me, Chilemi. Nicole Chilemi. Give it up for Nicole Chilemi. And then just popping up just because he's got his trumpet and he's so talented. One of my absolute favorite musicians and one of our original board members, trumpeter, jazz festival organizer, and all-around incredible guy, Mark Rapp. What'd you say? There is, yeah, there is. When I was in college, I was a DJ, and I had to make up a name because that's what DJs did, right? It was Scotty Holiday. So people would call me on Sunday mornings and they'd say, "Can you sing?" I was like, "Oh no." Are you Billie Holiday's sister? No. But you guys have a phenomenal tribute to the one and only Billie Holiday. Put your hands together for the Justin Varnes Quartet doing the music of Billie Holiday!
For the record, I also don't know what they're laughing at. But I fear I'm not able to tell you guys when they finally tell me. Nope. All right. Per usual, we'll dive in and talk in just a minute. you guys so much. I know they were already introduced, but very quickly I'm going to tell them thanks and have you guys help me thank them. Driving in from Greensboro on vocals and doing an amazing job. You're going to love listening to her tonight. Miss Nicole Chilemi. Driving in from Tucker on tenor saxophone, Mr. John Sandfort. On piano, Mr. Nick Rosen. And on bass and inside jokes, Mr. Kevin Smith. We're going to spend tonight talking about Miss Eleonora Fagan. She died in 1959, and when she died, she hadn't really achieved a whole lot of success as a jazz vocalist. She actually had a pretty small obituary in the New York Times when she did pass away. And she did achieve some success, but nowhere near the amount of success that you might imagine. And we're going to detail why that happened and also explain why it is now, or it was maybe 30 years after she passed away, that we started to really truly understand what made someone like Billie Holiday so great. The world was not ready for Billie Holiday. And she did have a very amazing career, but nowhere near to the level that we eventually got to appreciate her at this point. So she was born, her mother was kicked out of her house when she got pregnant, her and her teenage boyfriend. Then they moved to Baltimore. And when Eleanor was born, it was a very rough childhood for her. Her father left, and because he was a musician, and he wanted to go out and travel the world and be a musician. So he left, and then her mom moved her and herself up to Harlem, where she became a prostitute, and eventually got Billie into the business as well. She was Eleanor at this point. She had just an incredibly tumultuous childhood. Her uncle tried to sexually abuse her, and she spent far too many of her days fighting off men and other things as well. And while she was working, actually at this prostitution house near her place in Harlem, the lady who ran it had one of the very few high-end record players. It's called a Victrola. And in her collection, she had a couple of records by Bessie Smith and a couple by Louis Armstrong. And Eleanor at the time fell in love with these two musicians. And she would sit there and listen to them over and over and over again. And she decided then that what she wanted to do was sing like a combination of Bessie Smith and Louis Armstrong. And she decided that she was going to go into music and leave this life behind. So in her late teenage years, she started to go out and sing and sit in some clubs in Harlem. And she didn't know what a singer was supposed to do on a gig. She didn't have an understanding that there was a preconception for how the vocalist fits into the band. She just showed up and started to sing her behind off. And nobody saw it coming because, particularly back then, when you had a vocalist, Nicole, you might want to cover your ears for this part. Normally what happens for a vocalist is they're like, right, well, here are my charts, and I need you to give me 4 measures out front, and I'm going to come in and please play exactly what's on the page, and if you can, give me my note before I come in and sing so I can make sure I hear that, and don't make the tempo too fast because I have a lot of words to get out, a lot of things I'm trying to say. And she just walks up on the bandstand and is like, hey, what's up, guys? Let's do, whatever song. Let's just do this blues. And they're like, you're going to sing it? It's like, yeah. What kind of intro do you want? I don't care, just play something. And so they would play something, and Billie would just come in and kill it. And remember, she's like 16 years old. And so the musicians started like, so they started like trying to play like different intros and try to trip her up. And the piano player would play this like kind of hip stuff that most vocalists weren't ready for, and she would sing it right back to them and always know where she was coming in. And so very quickly, at least in terms of the musicians, she started to develop a reputation. Like she wanted to be an instrumentalist, just using her voice to do so. And she just thought, you're supposed to do everything that the horn player has to do, and this is what you're supposed to do. So she started singing, and she decided to come up with a stage name. She took her father's last name. His name was Clarence Holiday. And so she took his last name, and then there was an actress that she greatly admired by the name of Billie Dove, and so she borrowed Billie's first name. So as she started performing, she became known as Billie Holiday. And as she started to build up some momentum, she started getting hired for more gigs. And then this is where the turning point, one of the turning points in her career happens. There's a very famous producer by the name of John Hammond. And John Hammond goes to this club to hear this vocalist who's supposed to be headlining the show. Well, she's sick, and Billie Holiday is her replacement. And John hears her sing, and he just can't believe it. Again, it's a little hard for us in 2019 to process how, at the time, very few vocalists could just hop up and be like, I don't care, pick a song, pick a key, pick a tempo, it doesn't matter to me, I'm gonna kill this no matter what. And he said she was singing on a level that most instrumentalists could not play, rhythmically, all that sort of, and that's what happens when she soaked up that much Louis Armstrong. So John Hammond ended up signing her and getting her connected with a bunch of people. First and foremost was Benny Goodman, and Benny Goodman's pianist by the name of Teddy Wilson. And early in Billie's career, she recorded a whole bunch of sides with Teddy Wilson, one of which was a big hit for her, which was the first tune we did, which is entitled What a Little Moonlight Can Do. She, at the time, was known, she was developing as what's called a jump singer, or a dance singer, which is, she could swing a song better than almost any other vocalist. So she worked a lot of dances because of her amazing rhythmic sensibility. But later on, we, as listeners, we start to discover that as great as that is, her real gift is telling a story. And what I want to do now is we're going to do a very popular jazz standard entitled Body and Soul. And this is one of many songs that she made her own. And I always think of it, when I hear Billie Holiday, as a teacher, when I have students and I want them to learn a song very well, like learn the melody, I say, whatever you do, don't listen to Billie Holiday, because she's going to sing her own thing and you might not even hear the melody. But then once they know the song really well and know the melody really well, it's like, now go listen to Billie Holiday and let her teach you what can be done with this song. I think of her very similar to Aretha Franklin. Aretha sings somebody else's song, and she just puts this whole other spin on it, and then all of a sudden you can't hear the song any other way. That was Billie's gift. So we're going to demonstrate a little version of that for you right now. This is entitled Body and Soul, and Nicole does all this naturally, which is why she's the perfect fit for this. But when you listen to the song, notice the playfulness and the rhythms, and if you know the song, you know what the melody is supposed to be. Sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And that was Billie's gift as an improviser of lyrics, not just an improviser as a horn player. So here's our rendition of Body and Soul.
My days have grown so lonely. For you I cry, for you, dear, only. Why haven't you seen it? I'm all for you, body and soul. I spend my days in longing, and it's for you, you throw away romance? Are you pretending it looks like the ending unless I could have one more chance to prove, dear, my life a wreck you're making? You know I'm yours for just the taking. I will gladly surrender myself to you, body and soul. It's hard to conceive it, that you throw away romance. Are you pretending it looks like the ending unless I could have one more chance to dear, my life a wreck you're making? You know I'm yours for just the taking. Oh, I'll gladly surrender. I'm all for you, body and soul.
So as Billie decided to further her career, started playing with Benny Goodman and Teddy Wilson, and started to grow, one of the, I mentioned that she was developing as a jump or a dance singer, because particularly at the time in the 30s here, you know, that was the rage. If you wanted to make a lot of money in jazz, you needed to be out there getting the kids on their feet, if you will. So she was able to actually get to land the gig with Count Basie's band, which was a huge honor. Very few vocalists got to have that chair, and oddly enough, very few female vocalists got to have that chair. Basie worked with a lot of vocalists, but a lot of them were male. Jimmy Rushing, who was with the band at the time, Joe Williams, obviously later in his career, Count Basie also worked with Frank Sinatra a bunch. There's done a ton of stuff with female vocals, particularly back then. So this was a huge honor for her. So she got to tour with the band, and the band just instantly fell in love with her. Her ability to sing and swing with the band like it was nothing. Also, her ability to kind of hang with the boys. She could drink and cuss with the best of them, and just felt like she, the difference between her being a woman and them being a man should basically not exist. So she could just hang with them however she wanted to. There didn't need to be this stereotype of what the female singer in the band was supposed to be like. And she ran into a little problem in that way, in that when she would rehearse her tunes, she was very specific. She could get up and kind of do anything, but as she developed as an artist, she started realizing there's things that she wanted to do. Tempos she wanted to sing at, keys, intros, etc. And when she tried to tell the band, like, no, that needs to be slower, or we got to do it like this, it was pretty clear that she was not being respected. And probably a combination of being the vocalist, as I said, she's trying to break a stereotype of the vocalist kind of not knowing musical terms and things, but also as the lone female of the band trying to earn respect on that stage with them. So that developed after a while and became a problem, and eventually she left the band. But before she left the band, she did develop an enduring kinship with one of the best saxophone players of all time, and that's Mr. Lester Young. Lester and Billie instantly hit it off. The way that they would joke and play around with each other, that was Lester totally got Billie and knew what Billie was trying to do and connected with it, and vice versa. And they became fast friends. And anytime Billie could do a solo project, she wanted Lester on saxophone, if at all possible. So even after she left the band, she kept that strong relationship with Lester Young. And one of the most famous songs that they did together is a blues, and there's a really cool version of this you can find on YouTube. I had, back in the day, I had to buy this on DVD and spend $60 to get it shipped from Japan, and now it's everywhere for free. So whatever. But it's this great clip of the TV station CBS. What they decided to do was get a whole bunch of great jazz musicians together and shoot them for a couple of days straight. Just all the footage. It's Count Basie and Thelonious Monk and John Coltrane and Miles Davis and Ahmad Jamal and Billie Holiday and all, Ben Webster, all these great musicians. And there's a great track you can find. She's singing a blues that she was known for, entitled "Fine and Mellow," and Lester takes the very first solo, and it's an iconic solo. So we're going to do our version of that for you right now, and to help us get that effect across, we're going to bring up our other special guest. Now, he came in today because, for those of you who remember, I am recording a project, and we're doing this human rights project recording starting tomorrow. So he came in early to rehearse with us, and he was like, "Hey, I've got my horn. Do you want me to stick around and play?" I was like, "Yes, you're sticking around." So he's in jazz rehearsal outfit, just so you know. Prepare yourself. He's not going to look nearly as good as me. It's just not going to happen. But please help me welcome Mr. Mark Rapp. There it is. Where did you get that shirt? You didn't have that today?
I ran out down the street.
Oh, man. He didn't look like this earlier, trust me. Yeah, he's in cargo shorts and sandals, but that's okay. All right, so he's going to help us fire off this great blues that Billie made famous, entitled "Fine and Mellow."
But when he starts to love me, he is so fine and mellow. Love will make you drink and gamble, make you stay out all night long. Love will make you drink and gamble, make you stay out all night long. Love will make you do things you know is wrong. Love will make you drink and gamble, make you stay out all night long. Love will make you do things you know is wrong. So you better treat me right, baby, and I'll stay home night and day. Just treat me right, baby. I'll stay home night and day, when you think it's on, baby, it has turned off and gone.
Yes. Mark Rapp. Mark, you want to play one more with us?
I would love to.
All right.
But you have to chug that again, so I need to.
Mark walked up with a wine glass. Is like, sir, there is no drinking on this stage. We're going to do one of her other tunes. I mentioned her, like I said, being this kind of jump and dance singer. And she popularized a tune that's got a lot of lyrics and is normally, when performed by a vocalist, they have to be very on the beat and put everything right where it was originally written to sing it correctly, sing it in time, etc., etc. And Billie just blew that stereotype out of the water with her version of that. So we're going to jump into that tune for you right now to show her chops for this kind of music. So we're going to do her version of Them, Their Eyes. chops, Mark. We got a lot of recording to do. Save it. Save it for the record. Mr. Mark Rapp, everyone. So as Billie is enjoying a success as a jump singer and playing with big bands, she gets a kind of a career, another career-turning gig, and this is with the band leader Artie Shaw. And a couple of big things happen here to her. One is she wasn't technically the first African-American singer to work with basically an all-white big band, but she was one of the first for sure. And she got this gig, and one of her first couple of tours with Artie was down in the South. And at this point, she had been living in Harlem and surrounded by Count Basie's band and Lester Young, and she was fighting through things like early sexual abuse that she fought off, and also fighting off stereotypes for vocalists and for women. And now she was struck with a different kind of stereotype to fight off, which was all the racism that was going on in the 1930s. She hadn't really truly been exposed to that yet. And as she started to travel around with Artie Shaw's band, the band would be able to walk in the front door and they would pull her aside and say, sorry, you're gonna have to walk through the back. And after the gig, all the guys would go down to the hotel lobby into the bar and drink, and she wasn't allowed to. And she fought, and she would break that rule as often as she could and get arrested for it if she needed to. And at some point she just hit a wall, and she couldn't do it anymore. And so she left Artie Shaw's band and came back to New York. And when she did that, she essentially said goodbye to working in these high-profile bands that was going to eventually make her a superstar. She was only with Count Basie for a little while because she couldn't take not being able to be herself. She was only with Artie Shaw's band for a little bit because she couldn't be herself in that instance as well. And when I say Count Basie and Artie Shaw, I mean, these are two of the biggest, most popular names in jazz in the 30s, as you can imagine. Both of these bands have spawned megastar vocalists, and that's how Frank Sinatra got his start, was with Tommy Dorsey's band, and it's how Ella Fitzgerald got her start, is she was with Chick Webb's band for years. Well, Billie couldn't deal with having to be told that you can't do this and you can't do this, so she left that kind of career and changed her approach, and instead moved back to New York and decided to put on much smaller shows. She started playing cafes and small jazz clubs, and she started to find her calling there, because as amazing as her sense of rhythm was, and what a great swing vocalist and Louis Armstrong interpreter as she was, her true calling was as a storyteller, and a storyteller that we have heard very few of in our lifetimes. The ability to tell a story and just think, I believe every word this woman says. Like, this absolutely has happened to her, and I feel for her, or I can relate. I've had that happen to me, and that's probably the musician's, the artist's greatest gift, is to truly tell you a story that you believe and possibly move you and change you. And she found this calling more so than playing in swing bands. At the same time, when she was working at a club in New York, it was called Cafe Society. And it was in Greenwich Village, and it was one of the first integrated clubs at the time. So she was working at an integrated club and started to really find herself. And while that was going on, she was approached to do this poem. Right? And the poem was written by someone named Lewis Allen. And Lewis Allen wrote this poem entitled Strange Fruit. And one of the things about Strange Fruit and Lewis Allen is, Lewis Allen, that's not that person's real name either. That person was Jewish. His name was Abel Mirapol. And Abel had to hide under a pseudonym to write this. But if you're not familiar with the poem, it's an incredibly powerful poem about lynchings that he saw when he was in the South. And this resonated with Billie because of what she experienced, and also her father was touring in the South and got sick and wasn't able to visit a hospital, a white hospital. And by the time they eventually got him to a hospital that they would accept him, it was too late and he passed away. So she decided with her pianist to put this poem to music. And she wanted desperately to record it. And at the time, she was a pretty big star in terms of the jazz world. And her record label, Columbia, wouldn't let her record it when they found out what it was about. But her manager went around the record label and found a very small record label called Commodore, and Commodore released it. And she would close these shows at Cafe Society every night with the song. She would turn the lights down, and after she finished singing the last word, the lights would go out, and when the house lights came on, she was nowhere to be found. And you have to remember, this is in the 1930s, and she is doing things that the civil rights movement, some 25 years later would be doing, and still would be controversial then. She was doing it 25 years earlier. And they released that album. It was a really slick way to do it. They put her hit, Fine and Mellow, on the A side, because no radio station would play this. But she sold a ton of copies of Fine and Mellow, and when you flipped it over, there was Strange Fruit. And this really became she understood the power of storytelling. And so what we're going to do right now is do a song that she made famous in this way. It's called Crazy He Calls Me. And what I'd like you all to focus on is when you hear Nicole deliver it in the way that she does, she's able to kind of channel this Billie Holiday memory, where you believe that Billie Holiday has been just head over heels in love with this person and would do anything for them. And it's this that becomes her career. She becomes known as someone who could rip your heart out with a ballad, and you would thank her afterward and say, please do that again. So we're going to do a tune now entitled Crazy He Calls Me.
I'll move the mountains, and I'll move the mountains, if he wants them out of the way. Crazy, he calls me, sure I'm crazy, crazy in love, I'd say. I say I'll go through fire, and I'll go through fire, if he wants it, so will it be. Crazy, he calls me, sure I'm crazy, crazy in love, you see. Like the wind that stirs the bough, he moves me with a smile. The difficult I'll do right now, the impossible will take a little while. I say I'll care forever, and I mean forever, if I have to hold up the sky. Crazy, he calls me, sure I'm crazy, crazy enough, am I.
Thank you guys. I like these kind of shows because they do all the work and I just kind of shh on the back here on. Then you guys all applaud and I say thank you for all the work I just did. Oh man, sweating profusely back here, doing this for like a minute. I'd mentioned earlier on her mother and their relationship early on. Well, as Billie started to become popular, her mother came back into her life, and she opened up a club, or she wanted to open up a club called Miss Holiday's. So she took Billie's last estate name, basically, and wanted to open up a restaurant and nightclub, and asked Billie to help finance it. And so Billie would send her money to help for paying the bills and whatnot. And after a while, Billie ran into a tight spot financially. And when she did, she went to see her mom at this club and basically said, hey, you know, I'm kind of in bad shape. I need to borrow some money. And her mom said, no, I'm not giving you a cent. And I've been, you know, Billie was sending all this money to her mom and basically really a part owner of the club, and her mom refused to to give her anything. And they got into a huge fight. And after that fight, as a result of that fight, of things that were said in that fight, she went home and started to write one of the few tunes she actually wrote herself. And it is God Bless the Child That's Got Her Own. And at this point, she had to write her mother off. She realized at this point that everything she had built up to this point, she basically had to do on her own. And at times you'll have periods in your life where you've got a lot of friends, a lot of money, all that's great, but really when it boils down to it, you have to take care of yourself. This was kind of her mantra. So we're going to do her original composition for you right now. This is entitled God Bless the Child.
That's not your lose. So the Bible says, and it still is news. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Well, the strong get more, while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't ever make the grade. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own. Money, you got lots of friends crowding round your door. When that money's all been spent, they don't come no more. Rich relations give crust of bread and such. You may take your share, but don't take too much. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Relations give crust of bread and such. You may take your share, but don't take too much. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own.
So she realized that part of the way she could tell a better story was to write some songs and pick songs that were autobiographical. It was much easier for her to tell a story that she truly believed, which is why her repertoire, as she develops as an artist, got so ballad heavy, is because although she was great at the other thing, and she still did plenty of up-tempo jump tunes later in her career, she found her voice in being truthful, being honest with the audience, not putting on a toothpaste smile and acting like everything was going great. She wanted to really tell her story and see if people would connect with it or maybe needed to connect with it. So she wrote a couple other songs. She wrote a great song. There's a story about a tune she wrote entitled Don't Explain. And at the time she was married to a musician named Jimmy Monroe, and he came home and he had lipstick on his shirt. And when he walked in the door, she noticed it, and then he started giving excuses. Well, you see, this, what had happened was, she said, don't explain, man. Do not, just go take a bath. She said, get out of here. And she was really angry, and she just kept remembering that she said, don't explain. And she just thought about it for a while, and as she was angry at the beginning, she started to eventually get to a place where she was sad because she realized that she didn't want to hear about it. She knew it was going to happen. It's just, this was her lot in life, to have bad luck and have people not treat her well, and she was going to be fine on her own. But yet she spent her whole life looking for that person to take care of her. So in the song, when she wrote it, you can hear that she's upset at him, but she also, just wants him to come home, basically, and just wants people to love her and accept her for who she is. And this is really the theme of her career. And as she got older, her voice started to deteriorate. And I find this part fascinating because in popular culture, we're obsessed with the sound of someone's voice. Oh, that person's got a great voice, and this person has a great voice. And sometimes the person is using the song to showcase what a great voice they have, right? So it's this thing when you leave a concert, you can say, wow, that person has a great voice. Wait, I don't remember anything they sang, and they didn't sing anything that meant anything to me. I just remember, wow, that guy's really good, or that girl's really good. And Billie was the opposite of that. Billie was a storyteller using the instruments she had. Like Bob Dylan was a fantastic storyteller. It doesn't matter what his voice sounds like. So as her voice deteriorated, she was still able, for the most part, to put on some great performances. But her range diminished, and gone were the up-tempo tunes and the loud tunes, etc. And she was more focused on ballads more than ever. And her last record, which is entitled Lady in Satin, her voice is very frail on this recording, and it's one of her last records. And on there is a song that is my favorite Billie Holiday song, and this is the song we're going to end with. And it's fitting because when you first hear it, and I'm sure as she originally meant it, she's singing it to a man in her life. But as I got older and listened to the song again and started to understand Billie Holiday, I realized that there is a special connection to this song. You see, when Billie died in 1959, she was, okay. Like, as a matter of fact, the Savoy Ballroom, maybe 10 years before that, announced her as Willie Holiday. Even they didn't really know who she was. She had success, but she was not the megastar that Ella Fitzgerald was, or Louis Armstrong, or Frank Sinatra. By the way, Frank Sinatra said the most important influence on his singing was Billie Holiday, more than anyone else. He was a huge fan of hers, and what ended up happening is she decided to fight for what she thought was right. She deserved to be equally respected as a vocalist on a bandstand full of instrumentalists, as a woman on the bandstand full of men, as an African American in a part of the country that was predominantly white. She fought for this, and it cost her bigger and better things in terms of a career. But years later, as the civil rights movement occurred, people started digging up these records and rediscovering Billie Holiday. And in 1961, Downbeat inducted her to the Hall of Fame. And Columbia dug up all these old records that were out of print. In the early, like late 50s, early 60s, it was hard to find Billie Holidays because nobody was really listening to it as much as we'd like to think they were. But as our country, as the world evolved, we started to realize here's a woman who fought for all of those things, who stood up against misogyny, stood up against racial equality and sexism, all these things she fought for, and it cost her career. And through that, her legend grew more and more, and we eventually learned to appreciate everything that she did. So her career lived well beyond her, and now finally we're able to appreciate all the things that she did. So we're going to close with this song. It's entitled I'll Be Around, and it basically says, you don't really respect me right now, but I'll be here. And some point later in your life, you're going to rediscover me. And I think it's a poignant way to end this concert. Before we call it a night, please help me thank Miss Nicole Chilemi. You don't have to thank him, but check the platform, Mr. John Sandfort. Nick Rosen, very well dressed tonight. Nick Rosen on the piano. Show him the liner now, show him the liner. Okay, all right. And back here on the bass, Mr. Kevin Smith. He lives in New York now and still tries to find ways to come down and make this show, which I cannot thank him. But don't thank John Sandfort, thank Kevin Smith. So we're going to close with a tune off of her phone. Oh.
Yes, Justin.
Justin Varnes.
That's the story of this gig. Nicole's like, we should thank the leader. John's like, I never thought about that. I'm usually at the bar by this point. So thank you guys so much for spending your evening with us. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit about the great Billie Holiday, and we'll listen to her music with maybe a different set of ears. So here's our version of I'll Be Around.
Treat me now. I'll be around from now on. Your latest love will never last, and when it's past, I'll be around when she's gone. love like mine. Now and then, take a little time and drop me a little line. For when things go wrong, perhaps you'll see you're meant for me. And I'll be around when she's gone. And when you find a love like mine, now and then, just drop me a line and say that you are fine. For when things go wrong, perhaps you'll see you're meant for me. And I'll be around when she's gone.
Nicole Chilemi, Sandfort, Nick Rosen, Kevin Smith. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Next month we're doing John Coltrane. That's how this whole thing got started. 5 years ago we did a John Coltrane retrospective, and that's what kicked all of this off. So every September, because it's his birthday, we honor John Coltrane. We're going to do some Duke Ellington after that, Stan Getz, and João Gilberto. Got a whole bunch of great stuff coming up in the next series. And now, the owner of this establishment, Miss Tamara Fuller.
Are these guys extraordinary? Thank you, Kevin Smith, for flying in for this. So, as Justin mentioned, Sunday the 15th of September is the last of this series. We are going to put the new series on sale on Tuesday. Unless you're one of the people who's already bought it because you called me and asked me. Yes, you can. I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on here in the next few weekends, though, that I think is quite extraordinary as well. So, next weekend, as you know, I never had any children, but I have music children. So one of my music children is Morgan Garrett. Morgan Guerin is the son of the great jazz bassist Roland Guerin. He is, when he first appeared on the stage under his own headline, he was 14 years old. And I put the microphone in his face at some point, and he wouldn't speak. And he now has 2 albums, one of which charted in the top 5 for the Huffington Post Best of list. He is the touring bassist for Esperanza's Fall. Yeah, like that. Multi-instrumentalist. I'm so proud of him. He's at the New School in New York City. He's flying down with his New York City band to the Velvet Note to perform on Friday and Saturday next weekend. So this is the 9th and the 10th. And I would really love for you to be here. He is more than I could expect. Truly is extraordinary. And he speaks. And then the following weekend, so the 16th and the 17th, we have a gentleman named Eric Wyatt. And he'll be here to perform the music, an album that he just released that pays tribute to his godfather, who is Sonny Rollins. And it's also in tribute to a book that was just written on Sonny Rollins and his life. And I'm telling you, what a show. So think about that, if you like the music of Sonny Rollins. And then the following weekend, we have the great saxophonist Bobby Watson, and he will be here with Curtis Lundy and their full band. And Bobby Watson is just one of those saxophonists who I would say, you should catch him while you can, and he's great. So we're very proud to have them here, and we hope that you'll join us for that too. This is what we love to do, which is to bring you closer to artists who inspire you, closer to each other, and closer to the song that's in your heart. Come back and see us again soon. Good night.